Hello, my wonderful YouTube subscribers. In this video, I'm going to show you that how you can get started with Node.js development. This video is part of my brand new course, Node.js Complete Guide to Building Data-Driven Applications. In this course, you are going to learn how to use Node from the ground up. You're also going to use Express PostgreSQL, MongoDB in a real world environment. Look at all this content. This is close to 15 hours of amazing content, and it covers a lot of different stuff in 3 really big projects. You are going to learn a lot about Node.js development, security, middleware, Express, authentication, credentials, toggling menu items, uploading pictures, so much more. So if you are interested in taking this course, take a look at the description and click link in the description, which will take you and give you an amazing discount. Back to the video now. All right, so let's get started. The first question that you may be thinking that, hold on, what is Node? Well, Node is the JavaScript runtime. So basically it means that it allows the JavaScript to run on the server. Now that is insanely cool because JavaScript for a very long time was only able to run on the client side, meaning that it runs on the browser. And you can write some code in your JavaScript page, in your HTML page, which is all client-side JavaScript code. Actually, if you're using Chrome browser or any browser, you can actually go to the inspect tool, go to the console, and start writing your valid JavaScript, client-side JavaScript. So if I go ahead and say alert, hello world, this is all client-side, meaning that this will be running on the browser or on the client. And if I go ahead and execute this, you can see in the middle of the screen, I see an alert box. Great, but this is all client-side code. What Node allows you to do is to put the JavaScript stack, basically the JavaScript language, on the server side. So this means that your client can also be using JavaScript, your server is also using JavaScript, and your server may be inserting, reading data from a database. So you can do all of that stuff using JavaScript. Basically, you can create your full stack application where your user interface is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Your server is also JavaScript using Node, which is the JavaScript runtime to run on the server. And your database can be a relational database like a Postgres or a document database like MongoDB. So there are many other frameworks that are available, ASP.NET, and the Django, Ruby on Rails, that all run on the server. But now you can use the power of JavaScript to create your server. This is very, very, very powerful, and we're going to get started with learning that how we can actually install Node on our machine and what exactly is something called a Node package manager. So let's go ahead and learn about the NPM. All right, so you learn about what exactly is Node. Now let's go ahead and jump into what is NPM, which is Node Package Manager. So what exactly is Node Package Manager and how does it help us creating Node applications? So consider a scenario that you're building your application and you're like, you know what, it would be good if I can connect to the database. I need some package or a library that will allow me to connect to the Postgres database. Well, one option you have is to actually go and search for that library, download all the code, somehow integrate that code into your current Node project, and make it work. Well, that's a lot of work that you have to do. How about you can simply integrate that particular package into your application very quickly by something called a package manager. A package manager is also known as a dependency manager. So basically, you can search for different packages over here. So let's say if I search for pgpromise, which we'll be checking it out later or during the course. pgpromise is a library or a package that will allow you to interact with the Postgres database. So if I search for this package, I can go ahead and also install this package, which means that I can integrate pgpromise package library with my current Node application. Let's go ahead and see that how we can actually do that. The first thing I'm going to do is going to create a different folder, and I'm just going to say hello npm. It doesn't really matter the name of the project. We're going to simply initiate or create our Node project, and then install different packages. Now I can go ahead and create a new console or start a new console, jump into that particular folder, initialize npm. Now you are going to see that later on. I just want to show you that how you can install these packages. Don't worry if you don't understand what's going on right now, that's fine. We're going to look at it later when you are actually building your first Node application. All right. Now, if I want to install some packages, I can simply say npm install pg promise, and that's it. That's all I need to do. I don't need to go to GitHub or try to find a URL for that package and then download it and somehow integrate it. I just have to do npm install, which is node package manager install, and the name of the package, and it will download the package and then put it in a node modules folder for my application. So now if I say ls, you'll see the node modules folder. This means all the packages that you have downloaded, it will be inside this particular folder. If I want something else, let's say I want to parse the body, so I'm going to say body parser, and it's going to install that package. All right. So that's the whole point of a package manager. It will allow you to install different packages, which will provide you different functionality and easily integrate it with your Node application. Now, this is not really only for Node. I mean, npm is for Node, by the way, but it is available in many different languages and frameworks. In the .NET environment, if you're working with Microsoft .NET, the same package manager, well, the concept of the same package manager exists and is called NuGet or NuGet. If you're working with Python, then it's called pip. If you're working with Ruby on Rails, it's called Ruby Gems. But the underlying concept is the same. All of these different things are created for different frameworks, for different languages, and they allow you to install different packages, integrate different packages with your application. So you don't have to go to GitHub and search for these packages and download the source code and all that. That's going to take forever, trust me. All right. So that is the Node Package Manager. Now, in the next lecture, I'm going to get you started with installing Node. So let's go ahead and check out how we can install Node. All right, so now that you have learned about Node and npm, let's talk about installing Node and how you can get started with Node. If you simply go to nodejs.org, you will find multiple ways of installing Node. You have download for Mac, and I'll be using Mac, so I'll only go over the Mac requirements. You have the latest release, which is 10.15.3 at the time of this recording, and you have the current release. This one is saying recommended for most users, so I would actually prefer that you will download this one. Once you download this, extract the file. As you can see, it's downloading. And once you extract, you will simply go through a wizard and the Node will be installed on your machine. Great. So that's pretty easy. If you do want to install Node a different way using Homebrew, then you need to follow this article. Basically, you need to have brew installed. And once you have brew installed, you can simply say brew install Node. And that is going to install Node for you. But make sure that you have brew installed. So if you say homebrew over here, you will be taken to the Homebrew page. And if you want to install Homebrew, simply copy this particular line on your terminal, which is right here, and run it. Now, I have already installed Homebrew, so I'm not going to run this, but if you want to, you can do that. All right. So this is how you will install Homebrew. Once you have installed Homebrew, you will run brew install Node. I would recommend that you use this approach. This is much simpler. You simply have to download this and then run it, and it will be installed on your machine. You can also check the version of which version that you have installed. So let me go ahead and open up a terminal. And once I have installed Node, I can simply go ahead and say node -- version, and it will tell me the current version that I have. So that's the version that I'm running right now. All right. And that's it. So go ahead, install Node, and then in the next lecture, I'm going to show you that how you can get started with building your first Node application. In the last lecture, you learned about how you can install Node onto your machine. Now in this lecture, I'm going to show you that how you can create your first Node application. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder and call that folder Hello Node. Now you can obviously name your folder anything you want. What I want to do is I want to jump inside this folder. So let's go ahead and do that and do npm init, Node Package Manager init. This is basically saying that we are going to create a brand new Node project. And this folder, Hello Node, will consist of our Node project. So if I go ahead and run npm init, you can see that it kind of gives me some options that if I want to rename my package name. Currently my package name is Hello Node, which is right here. If I just want default settings, I can simply press return, 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 and I can go through all of these options. So I'm just going to get return, and now if you see after this, you will have one single file in your Hello Node project, which is called the package.json file. Let's go ahead and open this up in your favorite editor. It can be any editor you want. I'm simply going to open it up in Atom. Now, the only file that is added is package.json. Now, package.json is more of a configuration file which tells other people about your project. So you can see this has a project name, the version number of your project, some sort of a description of the project, which is blank, the main file that will run for your project. And this means that if I run this particular application, the index.js file will be executed, which, by the way, doesn't exist. You can see scripts. Here you can put your scripts, meaning if you run npm test, then it's going to type out this. If you say npm start, it might do something else, author and license and all that stuff. Now in this case, you might say, okay, I need to add an index.js file because this is your main application. I usually like to change this name to app.js. That's just my preference. And then I go ahead and add app.js file. It doesn't have to be app.js, but I usually like to change this instead of index.js so that app.js will be my starting point of my application. Now we can go ahead and get started with dealing with Node. The first thing I need to do is I need to get the HTTP package. So this is the required package that you need. The HTTP package is going to enable you to communicate and to start a web server. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and create a constant port and assign a property or assign a value 3000. This is basically saying that when I am running my Node server, it's going to run on port number 3000. You can obviously provide any port you like, but right now I'm just going to use 3000. That's kind of like the default. Now I can go ahead and call the create server function on HTTP object and pass in the request and response. This is actually passed to you. So when you are calling the create server function, you will get access to the request and the response. The create server is going to return you the HTTP server. So let's go ahead and grab that also. There we go. In the create server, or in the function, which is in this case the anonymous function, we can actually go ahead and set the response. I'm going to go ahead and set the response status code to be 200, which means OK request. I can go ahead and also set the response header to specify that the response will be of content type text plain. So it's basically a text response that I'm going to send it back. And in the end function, I can actually pass in what I want the response to display, which in this case is simply hello world. The server is not yet running. We have created the server, and if the server runs, and if you go to the root URL, which means localhost 3000 / then this is going to get executed, but the server is not really running. So let's go ahead and run the server. Server.listen, listen on a particular port, which in this case is 3000. And once you have started, go ahead and print out a message. You can say anything you want. I'm just going to say server is running. Okay. So now we have our server running. So if I execute this file called app.js, all of this code is going to run. And when this code is going to run, it's going to start the server. And when the server gets started, and then I go to a route, which route can be localhost 3000, then I should get back this response. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and start our server and then use a browser to go to the local host URL and see what happens. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump into the terminal. I'm currently inside the folder hello node, the one that we just created on desktop. And now if I want to run my application or run the app.js file or execute it, I'm simply going to say node and then the name of the file that I want to execute, which in this case is app.js. Let's go ahead and run this. You can see it simply prints out server is running. This means that it actually did go over there and started the server, and when the server is now starting, it's simply printing out server is running. Well, if the server is running, then that means that if I go to the root URL, which is localhost 3000 port, I should get back this message. Well, let's go ahead and check it out. I'm going to go over here and say localhost 3000, just the root URL, and I see hello world. This is amazing because you have just written your first Node application. You have just started a server, and if you go to a particular URL, which in this case is the root URL, you can get hello world back. This is amazing. Now in the next lecture, I'm going to show you that how you can return different HTML pages based on which URL that you go to. So let's go ahead and learn that in the next lecture. In the last lecture, you got started with Node and you built your first Node application in Node server running. And when you went to the 3000 URL, meaning localhost 3000 port, it actually sends back the hello world message. This is a great achievement because you're writing JavaScript to run a server, a Node server. This is amazing. How can we take this to the next level? How about if we go to a URL root, then it will send us a file back, maybe index.html file. And if we go to a different URL, it will send us back a different file. So let's say that if we are going to localhost 3000 / then it will give us the index.html file. If we go to localhost 3000 / hello, then it will give us the hello.html file. And for all other, which means that if I go to localhost and 3000 and anything else over here, which is not the root or hello, it should just give us, well, file not found, some sort of a message. So how can we build something similar to this? So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this code that we wrote. You already know that we are passing in the request that is already passed to the server function. So we have access to the request and we have access to the response. So we can actually go do a switch over the request. So request.url. And based on a particular request, whether it is the root or /hello, we can perform some action. So I'm going to go over here and say case. If it is just the root, then I'll do something. But what should I do at this point? Well, I should read all the content or all the HTML, all the data from an HTML file and then return it. But I don't even have an HTML file, so let's go ahead and create one. Let's go ahead and create a file called index.html and write some sort of HTML in it. I'm going to make sure that this HTML is pretty basic, nothing really going on. Body and then body. Inside the body, I can simply add one h1 and I can say this is my index page. So I'm just going to say index. Perfect. So we now do have an index.html file. But the question is, how would I read the file? For that, I will need to import a different package. That package is called the fs or file stream package, and I'm going to represent it by fs, require, and the file stream package, which is fs. Now, using the file stream package and the file stream library, I can actually read the file. fs.read file, passing in the URL of the file, well, basically the position of the file. So the file is in the root in the same folder, so basically inside a hello node, and the file is called index.html. If you are able to read that file, there's a callback function. This is going to give you an error or the actual data of the file. So now we can actually put this data and we can actually send it back. So I can say response.status code equals to 200, and then response.set header, and then the content type. This is where we're going to set the content type to text/HTML, and then response.end, and then passing in the actual data of the file. Okay, this is great. Now let's go ahead and run this and try to visit the localhost root URL, which is basically localhost 3000, and see if we can get access, if we can get displayed the index.html file. The first thing I will need to do is to start my server. So node app.js. Server is running, great. And now I'm going to simply go ahead and refresh this page, and wow, great. So I can actually see the index.html page. This is fantastic. Now the other thing that I need to do is if I go to the hello route over here, then I should see hello.html. You can see that the server is not responding yet because it's trying to match that URL. It's trying to get the response, but you can see the server, well, it's not responding. So that is not good because the client can be waiting there forever. So now let's go ahead and implement a different case which will return us hello.html. So let's go ahead and first add the file hello.html. There we go. It will be very similar to the index.html. So I'm just going to copy paste the code and change this to hello so that I can differentiate between the index file and the hello file. We are going to use the same case structure, so I can actually use or copy this case and make sure that this is, I'm not sure why it's going inside over there, but let's actually make sure that all this indentation is correct, because once you are inside a case block, making sure indentation is correct is very important. So this time we will be looking for a route which is called hello. And this time we are going to return hello.html. Great, save it. Now in order for these changes to make effect, I need to stop the server, which is Control-C, and then run the server again by using node app.js. Great. So let's go to the root URL first. I'm going to refresh the page. And now we have another problem. You can see the server actually threw an error and it printed out the error on the terminal. If you look at the error, it's basically saying that you cannot set the headers after they are sent to the client. Now what's going on is that this case gets executed, and then after this case gets executed, it executes this case if it matches. And the problem is that you have already sent the response. So what we need to do is we only need to execute one particular case. So we're just going to break from over here. So this case was executing and then it was trying to go over here, but we are now restricting it. We're simply going to tell it to break out. So once you go inside over here, just break it out, like break out of the switch. Okay, let's go ahead and run it again. Refresh the page, that's fine. Index.html is getting displayed. And I can go to hello, and now hello page is getting displayed. Great. What about if I type something else over here? What if I type buy? Not working again, because we don't have any route defined if we go to the buy. So how can we fix that? Well, these are the only two cases that we are actually interested in, but if you do want to do something for a default case, then you can use the default case. The default case, we're going to set the response header and the header, this response code and set header, and in this case I can say 404, and sending back, either I can send back a file or I can simply send back a not found, just as a string. All right. Now let's go ahead and run this. So I'm going to go back over here, stop the server, start the server again so that my changes are there. Let's go ahead and check out our hello route, working fine. Let's go ahead and check out our root route, and root is working fine. What about if I just type in some route that doesn't exist? It just says not found. So this is working correctly also. So this is great. We were able to create a very simple Node application, which is purely written in Node, which also is aware of the different routes. So we can go to the root route, we can go to the hello route, and obviously you can build your own routes and render those pages also. And this is the default route. If it doesn't matches over here and here, then do the default part. Now this is obviously very cumbersome. This is a lot of code that we need to type. We need to set the status and all those things, and I'm not even checking for the error over here, and then the code will become bigger and bigger and bigger. How about if we can write the same code but with less code? The same functionality but much more easily. There is another framework that is available which runs on top of Node that will provide you with easy access and a really nice API design so that you can create these routes. And that is called RxSwift. Let's go ahead and check out RxSwift in the next section.